I'll start the time then.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kaden,
And I'm Shenrong.
and our project is Overhaul. So what is our problem, right? Our problem is overfishing. So according to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, 90% of the world's fish stocks are either fully exploited or overexploited, and 1/3 of fisheries are overfished. And in addition, a 2008 study, of course, it's been proven to be later on, it estimated that oceans will be completely devoid of fish by 2048. Just imagine in your lifetime that, when you go to the beach, there will be absolutely no fish.
And overfishing serves as a prime example of the tragedy of the commons, which is when individuals exploit shared or public resources for their own benefit and degrade them. And we have a quick comic that shows this phenomenon. Overfishing can happen because economic motives, technological advancements that increase fishing efficiency, limited regulations, and weak enforcement. And most importantly, we strongly believe that the most significant reason for overfishing is the lack of awareness and education about the importance of sustainable fishing practices, as many do not fully grasp the consequences of their action.
Now we're gonna go on a tangent here. So what's the correlation between all of these video games? Let me give you a hint. When you're playing Outer Wilds, did you get kind of the feeling to explore the world, to be curious, to kind of explore, the universe, right? Or when you were playing the Oregon Trail, did you feel like you kind of understood what the people in the mid 1850s were going through, kind of trying this experience, right? The bottom line is games bring awareness. How's this relevant? Introducing Overhaul.
Now, Overhaul is a browser-based game that aims to teach players the causes and effects of unsustainable fishing and fishery exploitation, ultimately educating and encouraging players to create a more sustainable future.
So how it works is players will be running and operating their own fishery, right? Their own business. They'll encounter random events that'll cause them to make unsustainable decisions or harm the local ecosystem potentially. And throughout the game, a player's assistant, a fish, will teach them important concepts relating to fishery exploitation, overfishing, et cetera, et cetera. And by the end of the game, hopefully, because of running a fishery, understanding what they're going through, as well as these random events, players will have a broad understanding of the causes and consequences of overfishing.
Now, some of the topics that are covered in Overhaul includes tragedy of the commons, effects of government regulations, extreme weather events, supply and demand, effects of pollution, fishery management. And we hope by exposing these topics to players, they can experience the challenges of managing a fishery and develop a deep comprehension of the consequences associated with overfishing through their own decisions.
Now let's move on to the demo, the fun part. So if I were to load the game, it brings us to the title screen. Overhaul is a browser-based game, as we said before, run on p5.js, and it uses custom sprites, custom soundtracks, custom music, and custom everything. So completely original. Moving to the title screen, we'll see our assistant, right? So this guy is where players will interact with all the with like all the information, get all the information, and kind of he's really just your guide. So after I input a company name, we're brought to the menu. So this is where the fun part happens. Players, it's just a normal game, it's a management game. So players can see their expenses, no expenses so far. They can look at the news, which will contain events, monthly earnings, et cetera, et cetera. A shop where they can spend, their wealth, and then the home, of course, there's nothing here, but where they can kind of show off your achievements. Now, this is the most important one, go fish. So this is how you progress in the game. You can input a cash quantity, and it tells you how much you put in how much you want to cash for the month. So I'm gonna fish, let's say, half of the fish pond, right? That's completely terrible for the population. And first we'll get down a breakdown of kind of the expenses and all that, pretty basic. And then here's the cool part. Our fish will tell us, based on our actions and the random events, it'll tell us basically the consequences of our actions. For example, because we fish so much, we discussed the tragedy of the commons where competitors will fish more if you fish more, because it's like, oh, if you're going to use so much, I'm going to use so much. So the fish will explain that. as well as other topics. For example, we overfish clearly, and it's going to tell us, this is cause trophic cascades, all that sort of stuff, all the boring stuff, right? But the cool thing is we built in education to our game, because to succeed in this game, players will maybe first start by speccing in to profit. However, that's not what you want to do. You want to not only, maintain your operating costs and make a profit, but you also want to keep in mind the fish population, because if the fish fail, you will also fail. Now, this sort of progression is kind of what we're going for, because this allows users to kind of understand some of the decision making that they have to do and how fisheries can better, manage their thing, right? It's like, why not? Because I hear a lot of times, why don't, they just fish all the fish and they make a ton of money, right? This is exactly why.
Well,
Now, the future plans.
so although Overhaul is a playable game in its current state, and we still have many improvements that we want to implement before release. And some of that includes creating a mobile application, optimizing the interface, and most importantly, add more content and knowledge for players to explore.
So the bottom line is we're trying to make this more accessible to people, and nowadays who doesn't like games, right? So we truly think this is the best way to reach the younger generation, to teach them about overfishing and all that sort of stuff. And because the younger generation are the catalyst for change, and we need to make sure that they understand what they need to change. Thank you. Any questions?